Är du vampyr?
Hade du tyckt om mig ändå?
Vill du bli ihop med mig?
Welcome to Movie Umbers. I'm Bob Sham.
I'm Angela.
The sounds you hear are probably dogs.
Guess what?
Or creatures of the night.
We're talking about one of my favorite movies of all time today.
We do random generated movie reviews. And where you pull a topic from a hat. We've got a list of movies for each topic that I've made. Mm-hmm. And then we randomly generate a number from said list. And we landed on Exsanguinators, which is just a fancy word for
vampires.
And we landed on one
they
of
don't
your
have bottom things.
On one of your favorite movies, Let the Right One In, which has inspired an American adaptation and a TV show that's apparently been going on.
Let's not bother. Only watch the Swedish version of this movie,
or read the book.
Do both.
I really am not even remotely interested in seeing the American
No,
versions
I've never
of it.
have been ever since it came out. I've never.
Like, why? This movie was a hit. It became an international hit in its original form.
Yeah.
It just didn't need to exist, and there's no way it would be better than this.
No.
And we haven't even seen it, and we're making that judgment call. And we never will.
Better.
Unless we randomly generate it again. The randomly generated movies... Which come out of nowhere. That's what would have to happen for you to see the American version.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're watching Tomas Alfredson, his 2008 movie, Let the Right One In. Based upon the book by John Lindqvist, which he also, I think, wrote the screenplay.
And it's very obvious that he did.
Starring Kari Hedebrant, Lena Leanderson, and Per Ragnar, and a few more.
The children in this movie are brilliant.
Edited by Tomas Alfredson. Cinematography by Hoyte van Hoytama.
Gorgeous.
Music by Johan Soderqvist.
Also gorgeous.
Pretty sure I hit those names pretty good.
You know what? You had good intentions.
Yeah.
And that's what matters.
My heart was in the right place.
Yes.
With Thomas, I almost was like, Tomas?
Tomas? It probably is Tomas.
I think it would be Tomas.
Yeah. The children in this, our main... protagonist
Oskar
is Oskar, who lives alone with his mother.
We meet him and he's talking about squealing piggies. Of course, we know he's been bullied.
Yeah, you can tell he's acting out.
Son of divorced parents.
Stuff that's been happened to him. You do also meet his father. His father's like in his life, but his father's like away from the city.
This movie takes place in like the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
It definitely has that vibe. Because Oskar had a haircut that little boys in the 70s and early 80s
Well,
had.
it also is Sweden.
I know, but they weren't like in ABBA mode the whole time.
And yeah, so Oskar walks to school and home, and he gets bullied. And he,
real bad.
At night, plays alone out in the courtyard of his apartment building, and it is always snowing in this movie.
Sure. It's Sweden.
It's always snowing. It's always very cold. And
the architecture looks very brutalist.
Yes. Extremely brutalist.
It's kind of very sparse on what it showed in terms of structure in the town and stuff. We really only saw like the hospital, the apartment building.
And the school.
And
one diner.
Yeah, but only the interior of the diner.
Yeah, only the interior of the diner.
So this poor kid, he's having a hard time.
Some people move in next door.
And they put cardboard all over the windows.
Mm-hmm. It's a man and a girl. And Oskar immediately is intrigued, but he doesn't try to approach right away.
And one night he goes out to play, and the girl is, You could tell she's a creature of the night
Eli.
because she's standing elevated on something.
Yeah, she's all of a sudden very quiet, elevated, and she's wearing just like a white button-down shirt and pants. And he says to her, like, why are you not cold? And she says...
And no shoes.
I think I've forgotten. There she's wearing shoes. Later she's not. But they make a point in that first scene that she has shoes on.
People would ask questions, the kid out in the Swedish snow.
Yeah. When she stops wearing shoes, when we get a little further into the story, is when she no longer has a caretaker.
Right. She's
Going a little rogue because she kind of has to.
Caretaker has slit a guy's throat and has drained. He knocks him out with some like acid substance, and then hangs
It's like
him
an
up
inhalant.
like a deer and drains his blood.
But this is where the beginning of the end, actually, because it's the very beginning of the movie. But as soon as this happens, you know they're on a downward spiral for her because, or for Eli. He goes immediately when they get there. It's like their first night there, or second night there. He goes to kill someone to drain the blood. Like he's got his whole kit with like his funnel and his jug and all this stuff. But he gets caught. A beautiful dog
This large poodle
catches him.
I love how casual this dog was.
Barks once.
Yeah.
And then sits.
And then sits, and their owners are coming, but the dog's just chilling there staring while this man is just scrambling to fix up his horrifying act that he just did. And he forgot to take the jug of blood.
And then
back.
so he gets back and...
But it was just so
Eli's-
funny how the dog's just sitting there like...
That was hilarious. I know. Some of the parts of this movie, there are like genuinely funny things that happen in this movie, which is also one of my favorite things ever. When something's so serious, but there are these like moments of like levity, it's like so good. It's just oddness. But yeah, so Eli gets really mad at him.
Yeah,
because
you can hear her yelling at him.
Yeah, and that's one of also the first times I think that Oskar, he hears them having this fight. He's met her, but their interactions are very brief. She actually says to him out in the courtyard, she's like, I want to be alone. And he's like, well, so do I. And she's like, well, then leave. And he's like, well, I've been here longer than you. Like, they kind of have this little bit of a tussle. But over multiple nights, they do become friends.
The caretaker, he goes to a diner, and the people who are living in the apartment complex see him, and they invite him
to hang out with
them. But he immediately gets his shit together. He's like, I gotta go. He's not trying to. I mean, obviously they've been running, and Sweden's not a huge country.
Right.
So they must have been all over Europe or some shit, right? I guess there is a lot of space up north in Sweden that a lot of people don't live in.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's way up in there. It gets up in there.
But so
like Canada.
This group of friends, when they kind of disperse for the evening, one of them is walking home alone. Eli is like under the overpass,
right?
And is in the shadows and is like, help me. And some of these scenes literally are exactly out of the book. And it makes sense that, the author did this, but it's so interesting. I saw the movie first and then read the book. And in my mind, some of it really got blurred because it's so perfectly the same. And so she's, help me. And he goes over and he's like, can you not stand? And she says, nah. And he picks her up and she attacks him.
Yeah.
And she turns... We talked about this a little after. You don't see her fangs. And I'm okay with that because she's a child and you don't see her. She's never like flashing them or flaunting them. Like she's never trying to be scary. But there are moments where her face looks very old.
Old, yes.
And she becomes it's like feral.
Yeah.
It's like a feral old face that's like, it's fueled by hunger. And then the next second she looks young again.
Yeah. So she kills this man, and so her caretaker realizes she's done this, has to find the body, and dumps him into this like little small pond.
Yeah, and there's like a drain. He thinks it's going to wash away because there is like a drain. But it doesn't wash away.
Her and Oskar do get closer and closer. That's what Rubik's Cubes bring people together.
Rubik's Cubes do.
And they do become more and more attached. And they don't, they learn each other's names. Their relationship here is so... You could tell it's really bound up, but there's not like a lot of over communication here. They're not like sitting around talking endlessly.
No.
They're just like, they just kind of get each other.
Yeah, they do start like hanging out more and kind of going around town together a little bit. And there's a couple moments that I think are really special where there's one where he takes her to like a corner store and he buys some candy and he offers her a piece of candy and she's like, no. But she cares for him so much that he's so dejected that she refused, that she's like, I can try one.
And it makes her sick.
And then she goes around the side of the building and pukes. And what's interesting to me, there's so much care between these two people. It's like they're drawn together. Like, we've talked about this in other movies. These two people are just supposed to be with each other. And yes, they're only 12. Who cares? He goes to her and she's puking and she turns and looks at him and he just hugs her.
Yeah.
He just hugs her. And he says, I like you so much.
Om jag inte hade varit en flicka, hade du tyckt om mig ändå? Ja, det hade jag väl.
He stays late in school one day to learn Morse code, and he writes out the alphabet in Morse code for both of them because they figured out that they can sit on each side of the wall and talk to each other all night. He does want to communicate with her, even though, like you said, they're not getting deep about things, but it's very much like a knowing she's there.
So the caretaker goes to make another kill with these kids and he's got this kid drugged and hanging him upside down.
It was the pool building.
Yeah, the pool. And he's going to cut this kid but the other kids know that he's in this room.
They're waiting for
They
this
know
kid.
that he hasn't left the building.
Yeah.
So they start banging on the room and the guy's like, I'm caught. This is it. And the kid starts to wake up after he's been gassed. So he goes into another room and they eventually open the door and they rescue the kid and he's in the other room and the substance that he uses, he pours it over his face.
Acid. He doesn't actually use that to knock them out. I think there's something that he has them inhale that knocks them out. He actually brings that with him on purpose because he knows that if he gets caught, it'll come back to her. He says to her before he leaves that night, he has the jar of acid and he's like tested it on something. And so you know what it is. And he says to her, people know my face. They know I live here. Because those people in the diner, if he had never had an interaction with them, he might not have been as scared. But he went out prepared to throw acid on his own face if he got caught.
And that's what he did. I thought it was maybe a suicide attempt. I mean, if you're pouring acid, that'll totally melt your face. I mean, it could be considered a suicide attempt.
I mean, yeah.
But the girl goes to the hospital, Eli, and she's barefoot, and the nurse is like very like, "Oh my God, you poor thing." But she's also like, you can't see him. There's like, people around him, like they're investigating the scenario, and also there's been people who've been murdered and drained of their blood. But then we see her scale the side of the hospital, and he opens the window for her, and pretty much immediately he's like offers his neck and she drains his blood, and you see his face and it's just completely deformed.
This moment of him sort of saying like, I can't do anything else for you except give you my blood. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. The thing that they don't get into in the movie, but as we're talking about it, I'm remembering more and more, is that, so there's this whole thing where like, if Eli kills, she kills grown human people. He kills children. The boy at the beginning, they talk about it being a boy.
He's like a teenager.
He's got this other teenage boy that he's going to kill. So his whole thing in the book is that he's a pedophile.
Yeah, that's not that clear here.
No, the only time they reference it in the movie is when he sort of meekly, jealously asks her not to see that boy tonight. He basically is like, don't go see him, because he feels some like ownership of her.
He feels more like he's a cursed person. Like maybe at one point he was Oscar and then meets her and then, or like that, you kind of get immediately that there might be a cycle developing here.
Apparently they do lean into that in the American version that we're not going to watch, but that's not the case in the book. In the book, he's a full-grown man when he starts taking care of her, and his attraction to her is the fact that she's a child. Kind of fucked, actually.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's doing terrible things, but you're a little sympathetic to him. Because, like, it seems like he's just caught in a curse.
Yeah.
And originally, the concept I thought with him, maybe, because in the Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game, they have this concept of ghouls in which vampires feed humans their blood and get them addicted to their blood, and they become servants and can be controlled and do things for them. It kind of felt like that kind of a scenario as well. But we never see him like taste her blood or anything like that. So she doesn't have her caretaker, and things kind of fall apart in their personal life. obviously she's not going to be able to be in this apartment forever.
This is true.
And she has to go out and feed. And she finds the lady that lives in that apartment and she bites her. But another man sees her biting the lady and he comes up and he kicks her off of it.
And someone did see the child who killed the other man. So now he's like, oh, this is the fucking kid.
Yeah.
Who's killing my friend.
So she runs off and she's been bit. And sure enough, like, sometimes you're like, you've talked about how you wouldn't mind being a vampire. But animals aren't going to like you when you're a vampire.
See, I know.
And it's no exception to that rule. You love animals. They're not going to like you. And this lady, their neighbor who had tons of cats, she's feeling shittier and shittier. And she doesn't know why. She can't go out into the sun. It hurts. And then she goes to a neighbor's house and all his fucking cats jump her ass. She can't eat food because it's making her sick. She ends up having to go to the hospital. They strap her down. And she's just totally like a mental wreck, and to the point where it's like she has a hunger, a thirst, and she knows that she is like she got infected. Which is true.
And she says she wants to die.
And she asks the doc. She knows, right?
Yeah.
She's figured out what's going on with her, and she asks the doctor to open the blinds. And he's like, oh, sure. Opens the blinds. Sun hits her. She lights on fire. It's a wild scene watching this lady like burst into flames while.
And it's that wonderful kind of fire where it goes up and it like goes out on the ceiling.
Yeah,
like it's just, it's like all encompassing, and then she's just exploded. It's
and then
so
she's
good.
done. Yeah.
So after that kill, that's, I believe, when Eli goes to Oscar's room. Because she's alone, right? And she knocks on the window and he opens the window and she's like, say I can come in. And he's like, come in. And she comes in and she's like, turn around, and she takes her clothes off and she crawls in bed with him. This is also one of my favorite scenes where she's laying in the bed and he says something about how cold she is. Obviously, she's been walking around barefoot, right? And he goes, oh, you don't have any clothes on. And she's like, is that yucky? And he's like, no, it's fine. And then he goes, do I have a chance with you? And she says,
Take a Chance on Me by ABBA. A famous song by ABBA.
Take a chance on me. That's all I ask of you, honey.
What do you mean?
Swedish band.
And he's like, I really like you. Do I have a chance with you? And she says, I'm not a girl. And she says I'm not a girl to him multiple times. And
you
she
think
says
it means
no.
I'm a creature of the night. I'm a undead.
Yeah.
living
And she says to him no at first. And then she goes, well, would anything change? Can we still be like this? Is it the same? And he said, yes, it's the same. And then she goes, well, then you have a chance with me.
Oscar also kind of balls up against his bully and whacks the fucker on the side of the head with a stick.
because she says, you start hitting him back.
It busts the bully's eardrum after he whacks him on the side of the head with a stick. And at that same classroom
great
thing
scene.
they were at,
Yeah.
they find the dude that her handler dunked in the ice. They have to chainsaw this dude out of the ice.
It's like in the same moment. And that's also how it is in the book. And it's so brilliant because it's like kid screams because his eardrum got busted. Child over here screams because she found a dead body, and chaos. There's also a part where, so Oscar's like, yeah, he's like a little tough now. Bully, we find out, has a big brother.
Yeah.
Before kind of we get to the end of this, the one other thing is that there's this basement room that you can hang out in. And Oscar takes her down there, and he wants to mix blood because he wants them to be bound to each other, right? So he cuts his hand with this knife he's been carrying around, and she gets very hungry and she
Has to run away.
She licks the blood off the floor first
And that's when-
says, get out of here.
And that's when he finds out what she really is and
Yeah.
like the thing about letting her come in or not.
But he's not scared. Like, he goes to her apartment later and he's like, are you a vampire? And she's like, I live off blood, so yes. He basically then kind of starts like testing her, like asking her questions. But yeah, she comes over to his house at one point and she says, tell me I can come in. And he's like, what if I don't? Like, he's trying to be all sassy. Like, he's not scared of her, which is really kind of cool. But he's like, what if I don't? What happens if you just come in? This I love, and I don't think we've ever seen this in a movie. I cannot remember ever seeing this in a movie. Because usually it's just like, I can't come in. But she comes in, and then she starts bleeding from like everywhere.
But then he's like, no, I'm sorry. You can come in. You can come in. It bounds them together a little further. And he ends up spending the evening in her apartment. Like, a mother doesn't even know where he is for like a day, right? But the man who he lost his friend, he lost his wife, he knows this little girl's responsible. And he tracks it down into this area and he sees an Oscar's hiding. And the man goes into the bathroom and there's like layers of blankets in the bathtub because it's daytime. And he's pulling it back and he sees the little girl. And he pulls out a little knife. He's going to stab her. And then sunlight hits her a little bit and she wakes up.
And Oscar's got the knife there.
And Oscar like yells something, distracts the guy. And he stands up and the girl jumps on him and kills the guy. And she thanks him. But then she's also like, I can't stay here.
Yeah,
I can't stay. And so Oscar's mother's very mad at him because he's been gone for a while. And she's gone, as it would be assumed. And then we get to the climactic point of the movie. Probably one of the more memorable scenes in the movie. One that definitely will linger with you. He goes to the pool. He's tricked to going into the pool by one of the group and the bullies who tried to get him to his side. Like, yeah, that guy had it coming when you popped his ear. Why don't you come over here? The teacher wants you to come over here.
These two little boys do not want to be doing this, but they're like under the thumb of the bully too.
But he's here with his big brother, and they tell everyone to leave while Oscar's just floating in the pool. Big brother, the bully, who's worse than the bully, is like, you know who I am, right? And Oscar's like, yeah. He's like, we're going to play a game. You're going to hold your breath for 3 minutes, and if you can, I'll only hurt you a little bit. But if you can't, then I will hurt you a lot. But which is like, most people cannot do that. That's way too much.
No, yeah.
So he's like, count down, and he dunks Oscar's head.
And he's holding his hair like he's going to drown him.
Like, yeah, he's essentially going to drown the kid for busting his little brother's eardrum. And then you see this scene. So Oscar, he almost looks...
This is so good.
Oscar almost looks like he's concentrating really hard on holding his breath. But he also seems almost serene, like he's weirdly at peace with the fact that he might die here. And then you start to hear through the muffle of water sounds. And then you see a boy's feet splashing like along the pool. Like he's not in the pool, but it's like he's being dragged across the water. And then you see big brother or the bully's head like fall into the pool behind him. And then the arm in which is holding his head flops off. It's like dismembered. And then a hand pulls Oscar out, and it's Eli.
Yeah.
And then we see them next. They're on a train.
Yeah.
And he's doing Morse code on this trunk that's with him on the train. And she's doing Morse code back.
Yeah.
So now they are... Oh, and also we forgot that he sees that she
this is what I want.
Has been mutilated, essentially.
Yes. So in the part after he challenges her to come in the apartment, she's bleeding. He's basically like, go take a shower. Like she takes a shower at his apartment.
I totally missed this fact.
Yeah. Well, and the first time
when I first watched it,
I did too. The first time we saw the movie, because I think unless you know, and I even said it to you, like, did you see that? Like, I wanted to make sure that you noticed it because it's a flash. But basically, she took a shower and then he goes, you can go borrow a dress from my mom. Well, he's curious. He's 12, right? So he like opens the door because he wants to see her naked.
Yeah.
And it's right when she's pulling the dress down, and you see right on the front of her pelvic bone a horizontal scar. They don't talk about it literally at all in the movie. But the other thing is, there's this part where they kiss in the movie. In the book, when they kiss, she gives him visions to show him what happened to her. And it's like centuries ago. She's like 200 years old or something. She was a little boy. Her name was Elias. And she had long hair because it was 100 years ago, whatever, 200 years ago. It was like normal. Well, she was castrated and then made into a vampire.
So she's transgender, essentially.
Essentially, but not by choice. Because of the situation that she's in and the way that she looks, it's easier. And I keep saying she because she does, you know, like you said, like she basically is living as a girl. But she does say, the only callback to this in the movie is obviously that scene. They do have that. But you could also, if you didn't know what the fuck, you could be like, oh, she obviously has an injury. I don't know.
Right. That might have been what I thought when I first saw it.
Yeah, just like, oh, she's been abused. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember like the who or what. I don't remember if it was like the vampire who turned her who did that to her, but I do know that she was castrated and then made into a vampire and has now been living as a girl because it's like, I guess, just easier or makes sense, right? Or she doesn't actually say. That's the thing. She doesn't never says she's a girl. She actually twice to him says, I am not a girl. But you think in those moments she's saying, I am a vampire.
Yeah.
But she is, but she's also saying, and also, I'm not a girl.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the other kind of part of that is he does not care ever about any of it, which I love. It's kind of like a non-issue for him. Like when he's like, I'm not a girl, he's like, yeah, but do I still have a chance with you?
So we hump movies 1 through 5. You're going to give this a 5. Right?
Yeah, but let me say it. This is my favorite movie.
It's
one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's in my top 10, I think. I don't have a list, but I would say it probably is. And I give it a 5.
I'm going to give it a 4.5. That makes it a 9.5. That's a S.
That is an S tier,
That is
baby.
an S tier movie. We'll put it between Night of the Hunter and RRR.
Okay.
Genuinely considered one of the best of the vampire movies out there, and rightly so. It really is something special. I know at the time, we saw it in the theater when it came out in America, in the U.S., and it really was something special. Like, it can't be. We all knew this was different than, a lot of what we had been seeing before at the time, especially.
Well, and in my memory, some of the stuff was maybe a little cheesy, like the cat attack in my memory was like a little cheesy because at the time we were like, those cats are crazy.
That too.
But when we watched it, it actually was like totally
It was
fine.
fine.
And I don't know if that's just because we've watched so many more movies and we understand now the limitations on that, but
Check it out.
it was fucking good, man.
We have a top 10 S tier, and Let the Right One In is number 9.
All right.
So there you go. But this was a movie roulette review,
Yes.
which means you need to pick another topic out of a hat, and then we are going to randomly generate the number within said topic to decide what our next movie is going to be.
This is a long piece of paper, very tightly wound. Tammy?
Tammy, you picked Tammy. You haven't heard of this topic, right?
No.
Well, the topic is Tammy. Let's go.
Is it that Melissa McCarthy movie?
Let's go to our list of Tammy.
Here you go.
I'll pull it up on the screen here. That's right.
Here, take this back.
So, Tammy. Yes. So now we're going to randomly generate the
Is
number.
it all Tammy movies?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have all the Tammy movies that I love on there?
Do you
Tammy,
mean,
Tell Me True,
do you mean
Tammy and the Bachelor.
You mean Tammy and the Doctor and Tammy and the Millionaire?
Oh my God, Bobby!
This is the Tammys.
These are so good.
And, no, they're not.
Yes, they are. Well, okay, they were good when I was a kid.
You call everything everything you watched before you were 19 is good.
Just because I love things and I'm joyful and excited about things, it's fine.
So we're going to randomly generate 1 through 44. 42. Let's see, number 42, as you can see, is the movie Tammy. You want to look?
Wait, do you have the movie Tammy on there like 40 times?
Well, we also have Tammy, Tell Me True, Tammy and the Doctor.
Yeah, but you can't do this because we're never going to watch the Tammy twice.
Number 42 on the Tammy list is Tammy from 2014.
Okay. You got me all excited and you knew
I'm
this
sorry,
was going
do
to
you
happen.
have a problem?
You knew this was going to happen. I don't think you should put a movie on a list more than once. That's my problem. I don't think it's fair. I think you're stacking it like James Bond.
What does fairness have to do with it?
James Bonding me.
Who's benefiting
You're trying.
this? Who's benefiting this? How is this a fair or unfair scenario?
You did this on purpose to me.
Yeah,
because you knew I would get excited.
Because I have a Tammy fetish?
You have now really tipped the scale in your favor. Like I said, like James Bond putting the lovers in the entire tarot card deck. You're making me watch Tammy when you dangled Tammy and the Doctor over my head.
Do you want to draw again? No. Are you sure?
Yeah, it's how it goes. I just don't agree.
If
you're the boss of this show.
We can do the MacGuffin.
You're the boss of this show.
And you can draw again if you want.
No.
You sure? You're cool to watch the Melissa McCarthy's Tammy from 2014. Okay.
It's what happened, but like I said, I don't think it should be on their list more than once. I don't think that's fair. You're such a little stinker. That's the face you're making right now. You see, you did it on purpose. You knew this would happen. You knew this conversation would happen. You knew that I would be enraged.
You just better hope you don't draw Tammy again. Or if you do draw Tammy, that you hit between
Debbie Reynolds played Tammy.
21 and 24 if you do hit Tammy again.
There's...
Tammy, because of the topic of Tammy, is the one movie that we could end up reviewing multiple times.
Do we have to watch it every time?
That's the rule of the Tammy subcategory. Any other subcategory is like, oh, we've seen that before, we can mark it off. The rules of the Tammy subcategory are we have to watch, if we keep hitting 2014's Tammy by Melissa McCarthy, then we have to keep watching it. Check the show notes for links and other places to find us. If you enjoy this movie as much as we do, let us know in the comments. Have you seen the other versions? What would you think about those? We're not going to see them, but we'll hear what you got to say. Are you a big fan of the 2014 film Tammy? Sorry, Melissa McCarthy. Hit us up and let us know in the comments how excited you are for Angela to watch and discuss that movie.
Jason Bateman in that movie?
Possibly multiple times. You're thinking of the con artist one.
Okay.
Maybe Bateman's in it. I don't know. Tammy's in it. That's all that matters.
Okay. Death to all traitors.
Death to all traitors.